So I want to start with, the topic is quantified self and the future of health tech. But I want to start with wearables because it seems like at this point you can't really talk about the quantified self without talking about wearables. So health wearables have seen a major boom in investment activity over the last 2 years. In 2013, VCs funneled $176 million into health wearable startups, which is up from $99 million in 2012 and $71 million in 2011. And companies are doing some really crazy things with wearables. It's just completely just blowing my mind. One of them, Proteus Digital Health, I just heard about this one, is actually embedding sensors in pills that activate when you digest the pills so that people can keep track of what is this? This is crazy. It's almost kind of scary, like this dark Orwellian future is coming. So I want to start with that. So Malay, is 2014 going to be the year of the wearable, and what are you looking for in wearables for Rock Health?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting statement, year of the wearable. So an analyst that covers the space, Canalys, whose numbers are always cited, they said last year it'll be the year of the wearables. 2014 is the year, and I would argue most of the headlines have been about how it's not the year of the wearables. So Sergey Brin comes out at TED, he's not wearing Google Glass, and that's the story that they're writing, that he's not wearing glass. And then Nike's exiting the market, and then the other day, Nick Bilton, a writer at the New York Times, called everything digital snake oil. So it actually seems to be the year of the anti-wearables. Like, the press is coming out strongly against the sort of form factor, and that it's going to be the next computing area. I think there's two ways to look at that. One is we're usually wrong about these things, so there's usually backlash against, oh, smartphones aren't going to be that big of a deal. Everybody thought the iPhone was a joke when it first came out. I mean, many people panned it. So what we look for, fundamentally at Rock Health is, we know there's a whole bunch of sort of commodity devices today, activity trackers. I'm wearing a Misfit Shine, which essentially I have replicated in my phone through the Moves app. So everything in activity tracking, sleep and heart rate, we feel as pretty much commoditized now. What we're looking for basically are wearable devices that we think improve basic functionality, so measure physiology that actually matters, making that meaningful for the end user. We're looking for things that are reliable, so really high degree of accuracy that could open up clinical markets, so being used in healthcare, not just as novelty devices, and then convenience. So we think form factor, battery life, how you charge, how you sync, all these things matter quite a bit. Is it something you want to display or use? What that translates to in terms of the companies for us, we want companies that either have a really, really novel idea based on research of how to link human physiology to taking action on it. So measuring temperature on a basis watch isn't that interesting. Now measuring it in the case of detecting infection actually is pretty interesting. Or measuring brain activity to tell you your mental state. I don't know how to respond to an ECG wave, but measuring respiration to tell you about your mental state. I know how to breathe when it tells me the right way to breathe to change my mental state. So the software side, research side we think is really important, but also breakthrough in materials science, biochemistry, microfluidics. Fundamentally, again, it's order of magnitude improvements in functionality, reliability, or convenience. If we don't have that, we just throw the application out. So we're really looking for big improvement. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but just everything kind of sucks today. So, yeah.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question about where we're going to see wearables going forward. So Andre, you can answer this. Has the market already reached a saturation point with pedometers and accelerometers? Are we going to see more niche health trackers for specific conditions? Or are we going to see a greater emphasis on more advanced sensors?
So I think we'll still continue to see growth in consumable devices, consumer-focused devices, but the challenge is, are people using them, and I don't mean to repeat doom and gloom, but, looking at rates of people stopping using their fitness trackers, 30%, 50%, a pretty high number. I certainly like my Fitbit, and it encourages me to walk, but it also tells me, I get about 5 hours of sleep a night, and unfortunately, it can't solve that problem of my lifestyle, right? Which is, only having that much time. So part of it is showing that you can actually change behavior, right? And if it was easy to change behavior, we'd all be at an ideal weight. We'd all be fit. One of the most exciting things I saw actually was the breakdown of Google Glass. How much does a Google Glass cost? And people were saying, between $30 and $100. I know Intel's coming out with a new platform, Edison, which is a little bit of a shameless plug, I will warn you, because we're running a wearable device accelerator for Intel. I'm part of that platform. But that's a low-cost computing platform. So what I would say on the computing side, or on the consumer side, is costs are going down, but the ability to actually show that it works hasn't been demonstrated yet. And I think you'll probably hear that across the panel. In terms of the other side, the niche applications, there are really two problems with that. One is sensors. Do you really have sensors that can show what you can do? I mean, the pulse oximeter was invented in the 1930s, and you still have to stick some bulky thing on your fingertip and have a big wrist strap. Today, 80 years later, and so we really haven't had the breakthrough in sensor. Google talks about their contact lens that's going to measure blood glucose. Somehow that doesn't seem sustainable in the short term. And then, of course, what everyone will tell you, reimbursement, right? How do you get reimbursed? How do you show that it actually works? So on the positive side, the cost of experimentation has never been lower, and it will continue to go down in terms of being able to experiment with new devices, kind of bootstrap your way into showing if you can change behavior and those kinds of things. But then on the other side, you're really seeing big things with, are there going to be breakthroughs in sensors, and are we going to be able to get reimbursement if you are in a niche play? Yeah,
the Google contact lens, that's another one that's like, it's really awesome, but it's also kind of terrifying, like something out of a Terminator movie. It's like somebody's going to be
continuous
scanning
glucose
my
monitoring.
Levels.
Continuous glucose monitoring is something you might be able to get to reimbursement on. So.
Huh. So following up on that, will health trackers be eclipsed by smartwatches? I mean, as smartwatches come out that end up basically doing the same things, having the same functionalities, is there even going to be a need for just health trackers?
My personal opinion is that we are gonna end up with an array of sensors. I think the pulse oximeter is a perfect example of something. It's hard to measure in a watch form factor. Not everything happens at your wrist. Certainly, brain waves, pupil dilation, those kinds of things don't happen at your wrist, and those can be very important physiological indicators when they're consolidated with everything else. I know from working in the neuromarketing industry and just trying to measure when are people paying attention, when are they learning, which is actually can be a very important physiological parameter. You've got to put together galvanic skin response. You've got to put together pupil dilation. You've got to put together heart rate changes, those kinds of things. So I think we will see an array, and the nice thing is with low power Bluetooth and some of those things, certainly having an array of sensors around your body is possible, just integrating all that data and having it, again, change your behavior. I mean, I'm still waiting for my Google Glass to say, Andre, don't put that muffin in your mouth. Don't do it, right? We're not quite there yet, so.
Yeah, the other thing too about on the watch or on the wrist, I mean, I think it was Basis even that it was claiming at one point to have lasers that could do pulse ox, which they never really pulled off, I don't think. I think it was Basis that was saying that at one point. But the other thing too is, I mean, you got to look at the pain point, right? I mean, most people who need to lose 10 pounds know they need to lose 10 pounds, right? But the pain point in terms of wearables, I've been looking for sort of the next help I've fallen and can't get up type of thing, and it doesn't exist, right? So people are still wearing those dongles around their neck, and they have to push a button. So hopefully they're conscious, right, and they can do that. And so but the problem is on the wrist. That's a bad, trying to differentiate between hitting versus a fall is really hard. So you have to wear it on the torso pretty much. And then it has to be waterproof, and it has to be all of those things because most of the falls happen in the shower. And then also hopefully you can get a sense as to the hydration level in the skin, because that's the first precursor to a fall. So it could test the skin hydration and then say you need to go drink a couple glasses of water. I mean, that's what I've been looking for, and that doesn't exist. So I think, and I think in terms of the follow-up to the reimbursement, I think it's really hard for a startup to enter this space, because it's not that hard for a big company to come in and just run over the top of it very quickly in the distribution and the marketing channels when you're dealing with hardware, right? So I think that's a difficult thing. But there's some things like that where there's an obvious, clear use case, and there's nothing out there yet that really satisfies that need.
Interesting. So, Cable, what kind of impact will smartwatches have on the quantified self movement, in your opinion?
So I think when it comes to watches, if we had a great smartwatch, then I think we would all be waking up on the first beep of the alarm, and we clearly don't do that, right? I don't do that. So I think the idea that a super watch is going to show up and make us change our behavior, as Andre talked about. I think that's pretty unlikely. But I'm very excited to see what Apple does with its rumored smartwatch. I mean, they have Angela Ahrendts from Burberry running, I think, that program. And I'm just excited as a consumer to get a fancy watch and be out there wearing it. I think it's going to be a fun watch. Whether it changes my health outcomes, I'm very skeptical. I think typically, I think a lot of people in the panel mentioned the same thing, is that there is a difference between a diagnostic and a cure. And the difference is that a diagnostic then needs someone to take an action to get the cure. So an example of a great product that does both diagnostic and cure in one step is Nest, right? Your thermostat. Nest measures the temperature, measures the usage pattern, and then automatically takes action without I having to do anything. And at the end of the month, it sends me a nice email. I just got one today for April saying you saved X number of wattage, and here is your Nest Leaf. Like, you earned a leaf in April, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but it makes me feel good. And I didn't have to do anything. All I had to do was buy the damn thing and install it in the kitchen, right? Self-driving cars, another example. Diagnostic and cure melded into the same product. I think until we have a watch that measures my whatever vitals and then shocks me, as Andre said, to make me do something different.
Oh, nagging is better, Cable. Nagging is better.
Positive incentives, whatever it is. Bring me a beer every hour, something like that. It's going to be a cool watch, but it's not going to do anything for the U.S. healthcare costs, I think.
Okay, so I want to change course a little bit and bring up everybody's favorite dinner table topic, the Affordable Care Act, because we clearly have not been brutalized enough by the topic. So, Rebecca, what kind of impact is the ACA going to have on the health tech scene?
Yeah, I mean, we started looking at health tech in 2009 because of the High-Tech Act, which predated the Affordable Care Act, right? So we did practice fusion as a result of that. And as we saw the ACA rolling in, we made 2 more bets. One was Doximity and the other one was HealthLoop. So in terms of health tech, I think you're going to see a lot in terms of data analysis. Those are some interesting bets to make. And in terms of things, there's some medical loss ratio companies, focused on helping sort of manage the MLR for companies. And then also on care coordination. A lot of the cost in healthcare come from mistakes and just complete lack of coordination from one provider to the other, and from even the doctor and to the patient. And so that's really where HealthLoop came in. It's a really phenomenal platform to help sort of acute care patients get the information they need to have ahead of the surgery, get there on time, make all the necessary changes, and then post-care follow-up, ensure that the really catastrophic events don't happen, like DVTs and other things. And they've actually, I think, caught at least half a dozen potential DVTs that would not have been caught otherwise, just in their clients they have now. So I think the ACA makes that a requirement, that there is some level of follow-up. I mean, you guys have all been to the doctor. I'd love to see a show of hands how many of you actually get a call from your doctor or an email or any communication after you go, and you're not in a concierge practice. Yeah, practically nobody. And so, I mean, the bar is so low for these companies in terms of any level of follow-up that I think the ACA is bringing to the forefront of people that this is really necessary. The other thing we have seen, which is a completely changed behavior due to the ACA, is hospital organizations and care centers actually give a shit if you go to them and actually liked your care. And so for the first time ever, we have seen them hire marketing people that want to help improve their image. And we've never seen that really happen before. And there's this joke of, how do you know that medicine and education are not customer service endeavors? The people who work there park up front, right? The customers don't. And so, it's one of those things where I think you're really going to see a shift. You're going to see competition amongst providers to provide care, and you're going to see people, the incentives built within the ACA, you're going to see customer service and follow-up care be more and more important. So that's really where we're making our bets, and we're seeing some, the Cleveland Clinic and a lot of other people really make changes in that direction.
Mm-hmm. So are the rising costs of healthcare putting more pressure on consumers to take preventative care into their own hands? And will this be a boom for health trackers and the quantified self movement?
We still are not seeing consumers. We hope that that's the case. You know, we know that as more people were led into the, you know, the insurance system, that just like with, you know, subprime housing, that then all the costs go up, right? And so so we're seeing deductibles double. We're seeing we're seeing, you know, people's insurance rates, you know, double and triple. And so, you know, we would hope that that would then change consumer behavior. I don't know. I mean, I'm an engineer, but I come from a consumer packaged goods background. I'm skeptical in terms of, you know, seeing that people will actually change their day-to-day behavior until it really hits their pocketbook. Until it's, you know, we've seen some smoking cessation happen that way, but until it's like, you know, lose 50 pounds or you're not going to get X, Y, or Z. I don't think we're going to see it has to be very, you know, directly related. And I know, like with knee surgeries, for example, you know, if you're a certain weight, they just won't do the knee surgery, and that definitely changes behavior, right? So I think it has to be that linearly related. You know, you either, you know, you lose 50 pounds, or you're not getting the operation. I mean, it's that kind of thing. I think that it will take to actually really change core consumer behavior, because you got to look where the costs are, right? I mean, the costs are in a small population set of people with multiple issues in chronic care, usually many times related to obesity and bad habits, right? And those are the people. It's not, you know, not most people in this room. It's a small fraction of the population, and they really have to get serious before we're going to see any massive changes in healthcare cost.
And I think I would go back to the beginning of this, which is, you know, you used the word deductible, but how many people even knew what that was before they were forced to learn it? Copays, co-insurance, HMO, PPO, this language of the carriers. Are you in network? Are you out of network?
I have no idea.
No normal human being knows what that stuff is. And so what I would argue, how many of you know how much you spend on health insurance each year in the form of lost wages and taxes and premiums? You don't. You don't have one all-in number that represents your costs for the year. So it's great you have a $5,000 deductible, but that's not what you're spending on healthcare. And you could say, like, well, I have a pretty reasonably healthy family of 4. We see the doctor a couple times a year. We have a couple scripts. But that's literally the largest purchase you made all year. You don't know, but you're spending $25,000 to $35,000 on all of your healthcare for the year. And so we invested in a company called Stride Health. You go to their website, and you just put in, I'm a 32-year-old male from San Francisco. It shows you your options, all in cost for the year, calculated. And you can try different scenarios. I injure myself skiing, I like tear my ACL, or, you know, if you're a hypochondriac, I get brain cancer. Whatever you want to try, and it starts adjusting all of it, but literally no co-insurance, no deductible, no in-network, no out-of-network, and you just give it small bits of data as you want. No login, no name, no email address, and it's calculating your all-in cost for the year. And so I would argue, like, yeah, consumers aren't changing their behaviors, but we also present the information to them in just a terrible, terrible way in the language of healthcare. And what we need to do is absolutely shift the way that we describe products to consumers if we want to be CPG companies.
I would agree in theory, but when you look at dental care, where most people, I mean, the most insurance company will pay is 50%, people still don't shop for dental care.
But only 1 in 3 Americans go to the dentist each year, and so we invested in another company called Studio Dental that'll bring a mobile dental truck to your office. They're working with Dropbox and Facebook and everybody else, and you know their patients and Sarah, the founder, when she opened her first practice in North Beach, a brick and mortar practice, the patients walk away and they say and I asked some of her customers why did you use Sarah's practice? And they said, well, why do you take Uber instead of a taxi? I'm leaned back watching Hulu while she's cleaning my teeth. Nobody cares about the consumer in healthcare. And when you reinvent the experience, I bet 2 out of 3 people will start going to the dentist. It's just people don't care enough to use the services.
I think
they don't.
So I agree with you. I think this is similar to the financial services industry. If you think about the words like 401k and mutual funds and retirement planning. The first time that I heard any of those words was at my employer, right? First time I had a job, there was a 401k. And so I think that some of these behavioral changes on the healthcare side will come from employees who are also consumers, all of us, right? And because employers are starting to now educate their workforces about the benefits of working 3 times a week, or walking faster, or using some of these variables, because that data allows them to reduce their insurance premium with the carriers, or at least have a discussion about hey, our workforce is better than yours, right? So I think the competitive nature of the employee or the employers, where every dollar really goes to your bottom line, is going to start some of these behavioral changes. And I think once you get exposed to that in your employment, you'll bring them home. So I think that's sort of my hope for starting that consumer change.
So in the 4 minutes and 16 seconds we have left, I want to just go down the line and hear from each of you what's going to be the big focus in health tech and the quantified self movement for the future, and what are you excited about? Start with Rebecca.
Yeah, this is a little bit afield from that question, maybe, but I think there have been sort of two major drugs that have made a huge change in medicine. It's steroids and antibiotics, right? And I think the next major thing we're going to see is the microbiome and just realization of the brain-gut interaction. So I've been very, very interested in that for a long time, and we're finally starting to see some more mainstream data on that. And then I think that's in our generation, I think that is the penicillin of our generation.
Yeah, maybe dovetailing a little bit on that. I think just more broadly the omics space in general. So genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, microbiomics, it's kind of the largest big data problem we have today. With falling cost of sequencing, it's generating more data than we've ever seen before, and we're really excited about sort of the platform technologies that live above the sequencer, bringing the data to clinicians, bringing the data to consumers. For quantified self, I don't know. The one thing I'll say is we just went through reviewing 500 companies or so and making some investments over the last 2 months or something. One phrase that came up a lot, which I thought was funny, was nobody said quantified self during their interviews. They probably know we would just kind of scoff at it. Now the phrase that we're hearing a lot is understood self. That's what everybody wants, is the understood self. So we're going from quantifying it to understanding it. So just if you heard that out there, I guess that's where things are going in that space.
Which sounds like we're going into the cycle, because ultimately what you want is the improved self, but no one's actually talking about that. So we're not quite there yet. But I'd agree with those two. I mean, I worked on the original Human Genome Project, back in 1990 or whatever, and costs have gone down so much. But the challenge with the microbiome is right now you're measuring it whole, and they don't know interactions. But it's certainly, because of the dramatic cost drop, I think you're going to see some very interesting innovations there, and ability for people to categorize themselves and change their behavior because they're already a niche, right? You're already in a niche.
Well, Second Genome's also out of Berkeley.
There you go.
Oh, there you are. Go Cal.
So I'm excited about the boring stuff, and the boring stuff to me is our doctors and employers, right? So doctors, why? Because ultimately this is sort of science, and we trust scientists, doctors, when it comes to health. And so we have this, we invested in a company called Hippocrates 7, 8 years ago. A company went public. It was the first mobile app for physicians. Something very simple. You show up at a patient's bedside, and there's an encyclopedic reference about what drugs you should recommend to this patient given everything else they're taking. And the founder of that same company started a company called Doximity, which we funded, and it's a sort of LinkedIn for physicians, right? But physicians are now getting more informed, and so it's the, use the word, informed, not quantified. What is the word you use? What is the thing you've heard? Understood, sorry. So the physicians are starting to be understood, and I think they're going to influence all of us, right? To Rebecca's point, if a physician sends you an email after a visit, you're likely to open it. The click-through rate on that is going to be almost 100%, right? So that's a very powerful.
I actually would probably think it was spam from their computer. Like
Yeah,
they
maybe.
hijacked their email.
And then the second thing is this employer thing. So we have a company called Vator, which it's a funky company, sells a software platform, SaaS company, to employers who can then use that platform to incentivize their employee pool to do good things that will lower their insurance. And it's a company where, like IBM has this computer, Watson, right, plays chess and other things, but apparently it's a big data thing. And look at all this data, and they offer some good ideas about best practices, right? What should you do if you're a 25 to 35-year-old female who works at Google and probably has, a bike? Well, how 3 different ways you can use your bike to go to work. So things like that. I think that employers and doctors are going to do some really cool innovation that doesn't usually get the press and the highlights, but I think it's going to really influence all of us in this room.
All right, you guys are fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.